Okay, welcome everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mátyás Prommer. Mati graduated here in the University of Debrecen ages ago. I'm not gonna say when.
Because we were together.
Yeah, exactly. We were classmates. But then took on mostly conservation projects with various organizations and has been working in the field of conservation biology since. And then a few years ago decided to take on another adventure and obtain his PhD from the University of Florida in the US on a project he has been coordinating here in Hungary, the Peregrine Falcon recovery, or monitoring the Peregrine Falcon population in Hungary. So that was the basis of his PhD research, and he is here, fortunately spent some time in Hungary before he goes back to Saudi Arabia, where he has a position as a conservation biologist. And he's going to tell us about his dissertation work. So thank you, and
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you for accepting me, and thank you for coming. And I would like to introduce you the species and how the species are recovered in Hungary. I'm just collecting data about this species more than 20 years, and at some point, as Zoe told, I really wanted to process these data. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense if you have the data but not processed properly. So it was, unfortunately, I didn't have the skills to do that. I hope I have more skills now after the PhD, but at some point I had the chance to learn these methods, and I processed what I had, the data sets. So I would like to talk about these things. There are really two parts. The first is about the more general information about the species as the population came back to Hungary, and the second part will be more about the deeper demographic processes. What you should know about this species is that it became extinct in the 60s, and it came back in the late 90s. I'll come back to this later. And we started monitoring the species since then, which meant that we checked most of the cliffs, and nowadays also the nest boxes on pylons, because the species is spreading. And the team collecting the data, this is not only my work, I must say, but this is a teamwork. I wouldn't have been able to collect all this data all across Hungary. So there were a team of volunteers and rangers from national parks, and we put all these data together, and that creates the data set for Hungary, which is not really independent from the Slovak population, but I will come back to that later as well. So, as you know, raptors mostly across the globe, and most species are just going down population-wise, and 80% is threatened with extinction. And there are a lot of reasons. Most of them, or I can say all of them, are human causes. And there are conservation programs for species, for habitats. The two should go together, and this sort of research I'm introducing here is a help for conservation programs, telling if you need to interact, and if you do need to interact, how you should interact to save the species. So as for the species comeback, there are a few species coming back from the lowest point. I'm not sure if you heard about the DDT problem in the 1670s. Okay, Peregrine Falcon, bald eagle, white-tailed eagle, they were all affected by that. Peregrine was the most well-known case. It was all in the press, and in '65 there was a big conference where the researchers presented the reason why the peregrine populations are going down and became extinct most of the northern hemisphere. In Hungary, the species was gone. Neighboring countries, the species was almost entirely gone. One or two pairs remained in some areas. The recovery is very spectacular, as you can see in Europe. So all the blue areas are the areas where the population increased, and there are only just sporadic areas where the pairs disappeared. So this is the latest European report for the species. In Hungary, we have some historic data, not about the population, but we do know that the species bred in Hungary, and from the medieval time, we have evidences that the species was used for falconry. But one of, I think, I can say internationally, one of the oldest evidence for that is a legal paper from the 13th century that the two families were discussing the border of the real estates of the two families, and there was a peregrine falcon nest on one of it, and it was specifically mentioned that this nest should go to this one of the families, and this nest is still alive, there are peregrines breeding there. We visited the last 2 years. It is now in Romania, but that time it belongs to the Hungarian kingdom. And then we have other written resources from later stages and ages, and the extinction came in 64, well 65, but 65 there was no successful breeding recorded in Hungary anymore. And the recolonization started in 1997 with the first pair, not far from Budapest, and the population is increasing since then. And along with the first species, which at that time was very, in secret, no one knew about that. The monitoring started also in other areas in Hungary, looking for the species. So here you can see the basic aims. So I have been coordinating this monitoring and conservation program since 2005 or 6, I cannot remember anymore. So long ago, and collecting data since then. And I just wanted really to see if there are any patterns in the recovery process from every angle possible. I don't think that I should introduce Hungary as a research area here, so I'll just skip this. So in Hungary now, peregrines, most of the peregrine pairs bred in cliffs like this. Here's my colleague. There's a ledge here, and the nest is here, so it was taken during ringing. This area is also a cliff, it's a raven nest. So maybe you know that falcons do not build nests, so they are either occupying other species' nests, or they're just laying the eggs simply on the ledge or on a building or a metal construct. But they do not build and they do not renovate nests at all. So this is partly why these boxes were put and installed on the power lines, not for peregrines, but this kind of solution was support for sacred falcon that started to nest or use nests on these high voltage power line pylons. But as they do not renovate nests, in the same year or the next year, the nest just collapsed, and eggs and chicks just fell. And my colleagues, that was in the early 90s, started to place first nest platforms to make it more successful, the sacred falcons, and then this safer construction came into use in the 2000 something, I don't know, the date, that 2000 something, yeah. And the peregrines started to use these boxes as well because they like it. You will see how much. This is the sacred falcon, just for your reference. And you can see the comparison in 1980, when the monitoring program started for sacred falcon and most of the raptors, we didn't have peregrine falcons breeding peregrines. What you can see here are sacred falcons breeding in the hills and mountains, if you can say mountain in Hungary. This is the last year of the data set I used, 2022. And you can see that in the hills and mountain region, we have only peregrines. And in the lowland, we have the sacred falcons, so there was a shift. There was no real fight between the two species. It usually, yeah, there was in one or two cases, but usually sakers just left the cliffs a few years earlier than the peregrines returned. There are some reasons for that. I don't want to go into that details because that belongs to the sacred falcon, and this is a different story. Just for your reference, here are the estimated populations in the neighboring countries for the two species, sacred falcon and peregrine falcon. You can see that the trend is kind of reversed. That we have more sacred falcons in Hungary than in the neighboring countries. There are that you can find, and for peregrines that is another way around, which is kind of obvious if you look at the habitats. And our population is supposedly closely related to the Slovak population, but we still need genetic evidence for that. Okay, so some story that I already mentioned. It is important that first peregrines occupied the historic sites and then started to spread. And I think I told most of this. So what in this first study, the main aim was to fill this knowledge gap and learn more about the breeding success, brood size, and the effects of core. So what influences, what affects the population, what kind of environmental core rate is important for the species. So the specific objectives were these. And let's see what we have as a hypothesis. So we had some hypotheses, some were true, some were not later on, proved to be true. We thought that precipitation is important. We thought that there are regional differences because we had some kind of suspicion based on the breeding data, but obviously at that point we didn't have any evidence for that. And based on some other studies from Spain, we wanted to create a link between primary production and the top predator, which is possible, and you will see the results for that. I think it's quite interesting. And also we wanted to compare the breeding success in natural cliffs, natural nests, and in nest boxes. Okay, so this is kind of arbitrary grouping of the nesting pairs, but still you can find real differences in environmental backgrounds for that. So when we compared regional differences, we had the southern group, the northeastern group, which is not very many, but quite standalone compared to the other ones. This is a colder region and further away from the central population, so it's kind of justified. This is kind of really that's that grouping. The two groups are more arbitrary, and the reason is that for long this central population was really just the population that existed in Hungary, and the whole climate issue and the substrate is just different what you can find in the northern part of Balaton. Unfortunately, I didn't put the precipitation map here, but it would be more obvious with that. So the field work was data collection, ringing, and putting out camera traps. So this is how we collected the data. Color ringing was really important because this is how we get later the results for population turnover, survival rates, and these kind of things. And we also collected environmental information when we could. The work was coordinated by BirdLife Hungary, but it is very important that we work together with the national park. So mostly because most of the fieldwork were done by rangers and some of them by volunteers. And also in the later stage, when we had the nest boxes on the high voltage power lines, Movir, the state electricity distribution company, was involved in the work. So the coverage data includes the regional grouping, the meteorological data, nesting habitat data. So these were the coverage we used for estimating breeding success and brood size. And it was not always that straightforward that you had the data. For example, the territory level data, you had to create the territories, which is really, really difficult in a case when you have a species, you have breeding pairs, but you have just no proper tracking or information about how the birds are using the habitat. So basically, you don't know exactly the habitat or the territory size and shape. So what we used here, it was an estimation from literature and from our observations. We used basically circles, like 4-kilometer diameter circles, because in breeding season, birds are not really going further than that, peregrines, according to observations and the literature. And yeah, these look like eggs, but they are not. It's just because of the projection system, just distorting the shape. And we evaluated the land cover types according to Corin database in each territory, and that was one of the correlates. So we had to do some processing before applied the modeling, the models. For that, we use generalized linear mixed models, which is important because these are group data. So we also wanted to have the models accounting for random effects, and the final aim was to do significance testing. We did a lot of other things as well, but we didn't go for model ranking for various reasons. But mostly because of an article in 2021 which says that, well, it's a really good summary when you should use model ranking and when it is better to use other methods. And we went for significance testing, and we used obviously, well, not obviously, but we used R for these models. Okay, some results. So summary statistics. We used more than 752 nesting records in 120 territories all over the country, and this includes really all the breeding on all substrates, natural and artificial as well. You can see the main breeding success, 0.71, which means that in every year, on average, 71% of the breeding pairs are successful, breeding successfully. This aligns with the international data, so it's nothing special about that. The total number of offsprings during that time you can see as well, and the mean brood size, which is more interesting in this case, it's 2.5, which is kind of the lower rank of the international data that you can find out there. So it seems a little bit worse, but not much. So still we can say that it aligns with the international data. And the sex ratio is like 1:1. We just analyzed this because when we do ringing, we also sexing the birds. So if the birds, the chicks are more than 10 days old, I'm not saying it's always very easy, but it is possible to sex the birds, and we just record that and analyzed here. So we can say that this is the sex ratio in this species. You can find some nice data about the population. This is how the population increased during the study time, which is 1997 to 2022. This is kind of interesting that the mean breeding success kind of started to go down as the population increased, and also you see something similar here when the mean brood size are just less. Interestingly, you will see it later. This does not. There is no connection between the nearest neighbor distance to that. We checked it, and these are the regional differences. You can see that the western and the southern pairs, the breeding success, nesting success is higher than the others, significantly higher, and the brood size, north and northeast, just lower than the other groups. Yeah, this is just to see how it changed in the different clusters, as we call them, these groups. And the first one is, so this is the difference between a natural and artificial nest. The breeding success is the first. You can see that there is a huge difference. So pairs breeding in nest boxes are a lot more successful than birds breeding in natural nest. But interestingly, the brood size is exactly or almost exactly the same. So there is no difference in the average number of chicks. But still, in the end, it means more or higher production rate in nest boxes than in natural nests. Yeah, and these are the covariate effects. So as I told you, we tested a lot of covariates, and these are the significant ones. The February EVI, which is the Enhanced Vegetation Index, that means that when basically the spring comes, so it measures the chlorophyll content. And interestingly, in the western side, it's if the spring comes early and hit hard, then interestingly the results are lower or worse. So it affects negatively the breeding success. The brood size in the central region, actually, it doesn't really shown here, so it's not the best illustration, but it has a similar impact. We compared also or evaluated the effect of March precipitation, and in the west it is negative, which means that the more rain comes, the less the brood size, the less chicks you have, which is kind of understandable. Unfortunately, I didn't put the precipitation map, but the western part is it has the highest precipitation, so any extra to that, it's not beneficial for peregrines because they cannot hunt during the rain, and also when the nest is not protected enough, then it can cause the death of eggs or nestlings. So that can be the reason. On the other hand, higher March precipitation in the south has exactly the opposite effect, which we explain with the difference in average precipitation. So in the south, this is a dry region, so any extra will help for the whole ecosystem. Any more rain, humidity, precipitation helps there in a anyway dry or drier environment. And for the western region, which is for going back to the vegetation index, it's just obviously a theory we cannot really prove, but if you think if spring comes early and hard, it also means to smaller birds that they start to breed earlier. But we suspect that peregrines cannot really follow that, and in the mating season and early nestling season, small birds are very, very important for the peregrines, because male peregrines are feeding the whole family in the beginning, before the female starts to hunt again. And males are smaller, they can catch pigeons, but they prefer small birds as a gift in the mating season, and for the nestings as well. And what happens when spring comes and small birds start to breed? The probability of successful hunting is just half, because half of the birds just disappear from the system because they are just sitting on the eggs, where peregrines cannot catch them. So peregrines are hunting in midair and open air, unlike a goshawk that hunts in the forest. So it's very important that birds are up in the air, and obviously for birds breeding, it's not up in the air. So that can be or maybe an explanation. We will see later on. This is some data about territory occupancy. Occupancy, you should imagine this, that in the given time period, you take all the known nest sites or known territories, and you check the percentage of the occupied nest out of the whole big group. And you can see that peregrine is just going up from 2000s, and this time, well, not the same time period, Sacred Falcon is kind of constant, but the population there was not, at that time period, was not really increasing. So that can explain that roughly 60% of the known territories were occupied at any given year in that period. Peregrines probably will change later on when the population stabilizes, but at the moment it is still increasing. And if we continue this, then you can see how the population changed, peregrine population. This is the total number of occupied territories. These are the green are state one is the successful breeding, and these the gray, the unsuccessful breeding, the failed breeding, and again over occupancy and successful breeding as a proportion. So you can see how it changed. Obviously, because in the first 8-10 years, we had only less than 10 pairs. You can see the extremes. And as the population grew, the whole diagram is just kind of smoothing out. And this is just for just making a kind of visualization how the geographic center of the whole population changed. So I just took the locations, the GPS location of each nest, occupied nest, and just use the average. You can see the first years it went northeast, and as the further pairs appeared in more to the south, west. This is the mean nearest neighbor distance. I missed that. But you can see how it decreased in most groups, apart from this one, the southern groups, which kind of steady, and that part is not really increasing. Okay, just quickly, substrate types is just more for interest. In Hungary, the major substrate are volcanic and limestone. Obviously we see this here as well. And this is the land use type in different territories. The most pairs you can find in closed deciduous forests. And interestingly, the second largest type of land cover are agricultural field, because we have a lot of pairs now, and you can see how it changed the elevation, the arable land, and the forest cover part all the other way around. Yeah, during the years, so the forest went down and arable land came up, built, didn't change this, and the rest were not that big proportion. And this is the same for the individual territories. We did the analysis for all. Okay, this is, I just try to speed up because I don't have much time, and there's a more interesting part. This is the orientation of the nest. As we suspect, or you can suspect, the southern elevations or southern aspects or orientations dominating this, but to make a real comparison, should know all the orientation of all of the clips, not only the used ones. So it's more for interest. It's not really statistics here. So we find some patterns, we find regional differences, some impact of the weather and greenness that influences the occupation, and obviously nest boxes are really useful for the species, or at least supporting the species with time. And the second part, just quickly, we took all the information, well, 3 types of information, and we built an integrated population model for the peregrine. It could be interesting for some of you. We wanted to learn about the survival rates and the overall population success, and also we created a viability analysis. And yeah, here are specific objectives. And for the integrated population model, we needed to have overall population data, so the count of the population, and we needed to have data about productivity, and also recapture data for the survival analysis. And we used this book from Mark Carey and Michael Schaub. This is a really good one, and there are a lot of models that you can use if you want to build the integrated population models. And all the codes are available online for the book as well, so you don't have to build it again. And you can modify if you know how to do that. I did not, because most of it are written in JAX, so I worked together with Mark Carey and his postdoc Jean Badia, who made the JAX part for that. So originally we went for this pre-breeding population model, and now we changed that for post-breeding, which means that now this part is missing, and there are different survival numbers here. And these are the 3 types of information we put together for one model. The recovery data, most of them were coming from color reading, which means that we had to use a special model because many models are using dead recovery, at least for raptors that we started, and we had to use dead and live recovery for the model. Yeah, again, this looks different now. I just didn't change it, and this is not here. Yeah, this gentleman had me a lot, and he cannot avoid that I show him everywhere. Yeah, there was a really tricky part for this model, and that was immigration. Because immigration is something you cannot really see, and we still don't have data about immigration. So no ring recovery from abroad, no genetic data. So we don't know anything about immigration, and we wanted to include in the model, obviously, because it's a population started from 0. So at least in the beginning, individuals were coming from outside Hungary. But we found out that we tried a rate of using immigration as a rate, and also like a fixed numbers in the requirement, but it didn't work out. So it was the models were really unrealistic. So we decided to use a closed model that gave a much more realistic results, much closer to what actually we observed, and we used 2-year-old breeders as well. So it's tiny details and belongs to the biology of the species, but most of the birds start to breed later than 2 years, but some of them breed. So we added this as a hidden parameter to the model. And we used also age-dependent detection probability, because and it was important because we used for live recapture, we used camera traps at the nest, which means that adults had much higher chance to be observed than non-breeding immature birds. So that's why it was important to use that. Yeah, and then just to make life more complicated, we wanted to kind of model what a negative factor could do to the whole integrated population model, and we used the eagle owl as a kind of a super predator predating on peregrines in the mountainous area. But it could have been avian flu, could have been any other negative factor. We just picked this because we have nice photos for it for whatever reason. It was not, the point is not the eagle owl, but the negative factor. But probably it is true that eagle owl has some pressure on peregrines. But it works only for the in the mountain region, not for the lowland, and that's why we just rerun with this. And in the end, we made a kind of sensitivity analysis. You will see later, because we wanted to estimate the population growth rate with different survival rates for adults and juveniles at different productivity level, and it's quite interesting, I guess. And we also did some population projecting, and the quasi-extinction time we estimated. In quasi-extinction, in this case, means that we consider the population extinct or quasi-extinct when the number of breeding pairs decreased below 10 pairs. Okay, so these are the data that we used. This is just showing what are the annual changes in the data we used, and just out of curiosity, we compared the basic statistics of JAGs with RMARC. Some of them may know this, and with the Burnham model that includes live and dead recaptures, and you can see that the overall statistics is almost the same. Interestingly, RMARC couldn't do anything with the age, so I couldn't have results on that, like on any common sense results. And JAGs couldn't do anything with the cluster, so we have some interesting comparisons on that. But overall, JAGs kind of could do more for with the data. And this is the outcome. This is for the whole population, Hungarian population. You can see that the juvenile survival kind of fluctuated across the years. Adult survival is almost constant. Both of them are just in lines with the international results. Productivity is interesting; it's going down, but it's in line with the data I showed you before. And this is projection of female breeders, which basically the number of pairs, if you translate, how it will change using these data. So we can see that the population is expected to increase. Obviously, the availability of nest sites is not considered, and some other things not considered. It's everything is ideal. Then the population will slightly increase in the future. Just for comparison, with two methods, I did the sacred falcon as well. You can see that juvenile survival went down, and now, but this is the time when sacred falcons were coming out of the mountainous area to the lowland, and productivity is also fluctuated, but the adult survival kind of constant as well, and actually higher than in case of peregrine. And this is the recovery probability, which is slightly increased. It's quite normal because the population increased, so the probability of recovery increased as well. But this is for comparison. And this is back to peregrine again. This is the population structure of the species in Hungary. You can see the different ages or stages, because N4 includes all breeding birds, which is older than 3 years. So it's like a stage class model. And these are the proportional floaters. Floaters are the non-breeding birds that are out in the system, but they haven't started yet. So it's just going down, and the breeders are kind of constant from this point. But again, the first part is you might want or might not want to consider because of the low number of samples. So it's questionable if should be considered. And this is the interesting part. So what we did, lambda, if lambda is 1, I guess you know that the population is just stable. If it's larger than 1, then the population increases, below decreases. Okay, so here you can see the line, and these are the different productivity we added. We chose the lowest according to the literature, and the same for the highest one. No, actually the highest one is ours, so we didn't go higher than we had. So we were not very optimistic using just what we have as a maximum. And we just played here with the adult and juvenile survival. So you can see that until, let's say, this point, maybe this, it doesn't really matter the survival rate because the population will decrease. So the productivity needs to be at a certain level to have lambda of a 1, but then it depends on adult and juvenile survival if the population increases or decreases. And you can pick your juvenile survival from here, adult survival from here. It's the easiest is here. So you can see that if you go down, then it doesn't really matter at some point juvenile survival, or the other way around. The highest juvenile survival, for the highest juvenile survival, the adult survival must be around 0.7, well, actually not, must be almost 0.8 to have a stable population, not decreasing. So these are all come from the integrated population model. And if we go further, we did some projections. This is the data we have. You already saw that. This is this is a very, very negative and pessimistic view, picking the lowest values. It means that the population will really, really soon become extinct or dropped if the survival rates and the productivity rate decreases. And this is based on the mean scenario. It's not really good either, and these are just a random pick. So the point here is just to show that although the peregrine population is increasing, it doesn't take much to turn the point and to have a decreasing population. And it can come from literally anything, just like the population became extinct because of DDT from many countries. So this is just to support the argument that regular monitoring of any species or any protected species is very important, because if you don't have an early warning, then very soon you can find yourself here when the population is disappearing. And this is the probability of quasi-extinctions based on the previous models. So the worst case scenario means that by 2041 it is more than 90% that the peregrine population in Hungary will decrease below 10 breeding pairs. And these are just the others. So the best scenario, it means that 2041, the probability is less than 10%, so should be all right by then. So some point I put together about the outcome, and yeah, basically you really need to have early warning for these species if you want to have the chance to interact on time, and for that monitoring is important. Yeah, some other conclusions, and just an interesting thought. I didn't have time to go into details, but part of the peregrine population is now expanding to the lowland. Might be, we don't know, but might be a problem for the sacred falcon if the competition is really high for those nest boxes. So far they are doing good, living together, the western part of Hungary. but we don't know what is going to happen on long term. And we already have evidences that in some areas in Hungary, peregrine pairs disappeared because of the eagle owl. And the eagle owl is population is spreading in Hungary as well. So it will be a really interesting situation when peregrine population decreases in the mountains but increases in the lowland, because that can have an implication also on sacred falcon, which is endangered species under IUCN categorization. And then obviously if we get to this point, and we don't know if we will or not, but if we do, then the question is, what can we do? I mean, if there are 2 protected species, what can we do for that? Yeah, so this is just something to think about, and yeah, just would like to thank to these colleagues and professors for their support and help in this work, and also my colleagues in the field collecting the data. And if you have any questions, I try to answer them. So thank you.
Thank you. We have plenty of time for questions. Shoot. Yeah.
Thank you very much. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had another lecturer here who was talking about the veterinarian aspect of nesting in nest box, artificial nest boxes. He was László Molnár from Košice, and he told us there are real problems with those birds who are raised in artificial nest boxes, because something happens to the food of the animal. Because they are always perching on the metal surface, some problems happen to the food. Is there any indication or any sign of such?
You mean the feed?
Yeah.
Nothing. I don't. Well, I don't really believe in that, to be honest.
Actually, he showed some pictures.
Okay, but 1 or 2 birds doesn't make statistics, and the population is still growing. So I can imagine that there might be some troubles with that. On the other hand, yeah, it could be more because of the heat, not because of the construct. Because peregrines are perching, on cliffs as well, not only on branches. So it's not nicer either, but they can maybe choose where they sit in shade or something. So might be a problem, but I do not think that it has any impact on the population size or population trends on that, or the longevity of the birds.
Nevertheless, this is something what can be interesting for those organizations who set up these artificial nest boxes. Probably they can provide some shelter or not just metal surface. Probably it's also a good idea.
But yeah, but birds are perching on those metal structures with or without the nest boxes around, especially in the lowland. So what you suggest, it would mean that all metal structures, all high voltage poles, should be covered with something that the bird can perch. I'm not sure that it's gonna work.
Okay.
So they choose where they sit, and if it's very bad for them, they just perch somewhere else, I think.
I mean, the birds don't know if this affects their long lifestyle. It's normal, the birds perching in that area. I mean, I think about when I came here by the train, I just think about we have to protect that side of the at least around the nest boxes against the.
Yeah, but how?
I mean, we have to talk. We have to discuss this with the electricity companies.
Yeah, good luck for that.
Yeah, I know. But we know the birds perch there anytime and all the time, like the last 40 years for sacred falcons.
That is fine. That is fine. You can cover one pole where the bird spends like 3 months of their life, and they can perch any other poles around. So
I mean, I talk about the tower, the power line, the power section where they.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
talking about
yeah.
So it's a challenge. I don't think that. I mean, if this would be a really serious issue, then the population wouldn't have increased because it started in the 1990s. Breeding on pause with a handful of birds. If it would have been a real issue, then we wouldn't have more than 200 pairs now. So population-wise,
yeah, maybe it's already
some
400 pairs. If it's the, I mean, I actually
the toughest birds. That's natural selection.
Yeah, actually, my question is about you haven't talked about how many unhatched eggs have you find in different nest sites in artificial
Adult eggs.
yeah unhatched.
Yeah. What is the question?
Yeah, how many unhatched eggs did you find?
We did find adult eggs also in natural nest, and both in natural nest and nest boxes. Don't really have statistics, not many. We found full clutches adult eggs, but then probably very likely the peregrines were poisoned there by pigeon fanciers. So it's pretty difficult to say what is happening because otherwise the pairs are always there, even with the no eggs. So.
I was quite surprised about the modeling results that you have increasing populations, quite heavily increasing populations, and this population is still very sensitive to changes in farming. Do you have any idea why is that?
Not really, to be honest. Not really.
That would be interesting to see.
Yeah. We don't really know why this comes. We're using the real life data, and this is what we get from statistics. And I cannot say any logical reason because it seems that everything is fine. Populations are coming up. One thing maybe that I mentioned that we cannot model properly, that is immigration. So that may have some impact on
so
sensitivity.
Do you think that the increase in Hungary is a result of immigration?
But certainly in the beginning, but I don't think that nowadays it's a real thing. But the real good thing would be, and I'm planning to do that, analyze the Slovak and the Hungarian data together, because that could be, you can consider that as a one kind of almost compact entity, because now only the Hungarian part is kind of tricky because it's still related to the Slovak population. At least we suspect because we don't have real hard evidence like here and there, but we should have more.
Okay, so I would like to ask that what do you think that what will stabilize the population? Because now you have a population which is spreading geographically,
yes.
So that's why it increases so much. Have you tried to check that within region, what is the process? Has it already stabilized? Within a region, and you get this increase just because of geographical dispersal. So the number can be limited by the dispersal rate, by the nest boxes, by the food. So what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say region, but I can tell it in some hills and mountains, the population is not growing anymore simply because there are no more available nest sites.
So you think that the nest sites are the basic limiting, and do they compete with the other falcon species for the nest sites?
We have only peregrines in
okay, so it means that if there will be a competition effect, it will go through the food.
Yes.
And
but intra-species competition is there, so that
you mean for territory?
Yeah, for territories, which is obviously
but
still
then
the same
it comes
species.
Because of the prey species.
Yeah, but this is a generalist predator, so they hunting on birds in the air, but almost any sorts of birds. Well, depends on the size, but they
Yeah.
can catch anything. So that is not really a limiting factor.
And the owls in the mountains come as just a loss, a mortality factor, but not as a regulating factor.
The what? So the owls?
Yes, the owls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we found remains of peregrine falcons in eagle owl nests.
But
so
you
that
cannot check whether this effect is density dependent or not.
we could if we had more people in the field and we would check
You don't
all
have
the
enough.
eagle owl nests, like bringing and taking all the remains, and at the same time the monitoring in the same area would cover also the peregrine. We could, but it would take a lot more energy. I mean, all this coordination work for peregrine, it's a volunteer work. So
Yeah.
so it's difficult, and it's more and more difficult to get people in the field and work and collect data. So theoretically, yes. In practice, it's a bit difficult.
And another question: that have you increased during this over these 20
Yeah.
years the number of nest boxes?
Yeah, it increased this time, but that time. So the first peregrine breeding in nest boxes was in 2014 or 2015. And nest boxes were out since 2005 or something. Most of them, a lot of them. So it's just a natural spread because they still prefer the mountains.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So there is a very good study from California on peregrine falcons, and there are three big groups: the city breeding peregrines, we don't have in Hungary. We have the they have the cliff breeding peregrines inland, and the coastal cliffs. And according to coloring, the number one habitat is the inland cliffs. So both from the coast area and the cities just going, I mean, most of the birds going there. Some birds going to the cliff side, but the cliff areas is a sink. And the city is more or less stable, but not really attracting a lot of birds. So I would think that most of our peregrines trying to get some nest sites in the hills. We have evidences, though, from camera trapping that colonization of nest boxes was started by the birds coming out from the hills. So they are Hungarian birds fledged in the cliffs somewhere in the mountains in Hungary, and they figured out that nest boxes are good for them. Mm-hmm. So they are very plastic in finding nice spaces. We don't have city breeding, and in classical term, yes, we do not have city breeding peregrine falcons, but we do have 2 or 3 pairs breeding on buildings, the edge of some cities, in silos in a place you wouldn't imagine. So, answering your first question, if I look at the international examples, I think the only thing that will stop peregrines is just lack of nest sites, because they don't need anything. They can breed a high voltage power line without nest boxes, just where the two metal thing meets and creates a kind of nest sortings, like in Holland.
Two questions. The first one is about the role of eagle owl. Is it possible that pressure from the eagle owl pushes peregrine falcons from the mountains towards the plains? So this is the first question. And the second question is about the competition between sacred falcons and peregrines in the lowlands. Is there any niche segregation between the two species, or they have totally overlapping niches, and therefore we can expect peregrines to replace sakers at some point?
Okay, for the first question, theoretically this is possible, though I don't think that peregrines will entirely disappear from mountains, because I mean those two species live together for tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of years, so probably they know how to cope with each other. The number probably will go down if the eagle owl population just spreads. But what happened in Spain there were 15 peregrine pairs around Madrid in 2000, late 90s. 15 peregrine pairs, and the eagle owl started to spread, and nowadays you don't find any peregrines in natural habitats around Madrid. On those clips you find on the eagle owls, but you have pairs in Madrid where they didn't breed before. So theoretically yes, but I don't think that all the peregrines will disappear from the mountains. But regardless what is happening in the mountains, I do think that peregrines will spread to the lowland because it is happening. It is happening now. Just this year we have 2 or 3 new pairs in nest boxes, and some others in cliffs we haven't got pairs before. So it is happening, and birds are small birds you can find everywhere. So if there's a nest size, but probably they're not established like a new territory far away from already existing pairs, but slowly, gradually will spread as usual. I don't think that there is a total overlap, because the sacred needs mammals as well, and the sakers are more likely to use nests on trees. Now, last year we had 2 or 3 peregrine pairs using nests on trees, but this is not typical really at all. So sakers much more likely to go on trees. So I think coexistence is possible, and we have some sections of power line structure grid in western part of Hungary where there are like 10 nest boxes on one line, and it's like 5 of them kestrel, and then peregrine, saker, peregrine, and they are just breeding next to each other in a few kilometers. So, but we don't know if the peregrine population is start coming up, then what it will mean on saker.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you. Maybe can you go back to the plots where there's like the 4 parameters? I mean, sorry to insist on this. I think I still really don't quite understand. I mean, I don't have any experience with this kind of models, but like, how can, for example, in panel C, how can you control that they go down? I mean, if the margin of error is like extreme, so it's almost like from 0 to 120. So how come the conclusion is that, yeah, they can decrease when it's also possible that they also increase, no, a lot given the error?
Or this?
Yeah.
Well, this is the average of this whole.
Okay.
So, and it's smoothing out here. So it doesn't go down entirely. It just stabilizes on a lower level.
Okay.
Coming from, well, here you can see the parameters. So this parameter is, what was the previous scenario?
He's asking about the zone of uncertainty, right? How
uncertainty
is so large.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to the question that Sultan asked. Like,
it comes from if you know this modeling process, it comes from the reiteration, recalculating, and as the time passes, the uncertainty will just increase, because this is based on Bayesian approach. If you know Bayesian approach, so it's always kind of reaches back to the previous year, and it always adds in uncertainty. So every year the uncertainty just increases with that.
And what were the, because you mentioned that you use the closed population model, no? Because when you added immigration, it gets very unrealistic.
It was very unrealistic, yeah.
Like, for example, what were the unrealistic? I mean,
we didn't get up to this point with the unrealistic models. It was really way out in the first attempts. So we just decided not to do that.
If you say that this will stabilize, it means that there was something density dependent in the model. And what was density dependent in the model? Which survival rate? Or productivity?
but yeah, I was looking. I should have put the numbers here, but here you can see the survival rates here. So
Yeah, but one of them must, if it stabilizes, perhaps not. It is just an exponential decrease, as it looked like. But if it stabilizes, then in the model it must be some density dependent.
I would say,
It might be just statistical artifact, the stability.
Yeah, so it means that it is just
Could be, yeah.
decreasing, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there was anything density dependent in that, because they usually don't
yeah.
do this. Okay.
Last question?
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. The breeding part, can you explain? Breeding success,
Yeah.
regression time.
Which slide here or what? Back. Okay.
At the beginning, breeding success over time. There is some graphs.
Do you mean in the first part?
Yes.
Okay. Just stop me when you see it. This? Oh.
Yes. I think in this graph you include some of the parameters to see the breeding success.
This is the proportion of successful breeding of all the pairs that started to breed, and how it changes over the time.
Did you include some covariates?
Oh, this is simply the number. These are without covariates. It's just how it's changed with the uncertainty, because we don't know the pairs. But we use the covariates, but the covariate effects are here on breeding success. So this is breeding success, mass success. I should have been put on one.
Yeah,
So we checked all the covariates I listed in the beginning, the whole list. But this covariate had a significant effect on nesting success in the western region. The standard February vegetation index. The others didn't have significant effect. We found some effect, but that was not significant at that time.
Okay, thank you. So I think if we want to get some lunch, we better get going. So I'd like to thank again Monty for his talk, and then those of you who want to come with us for lunch, please. And then we can have questions and discussions. Thank you.